world.
Yeah.
So what do we want to talk about today, guys?
Poverty, electoral politics, and basic income. How about that? It's 4:06 p.m. June 28th. This is the Yang Gang Roundtable's weekly open discussion. So, what's on everyone's mind? We've got Faye Doney here, Jeremy, Mia, Moto, myself, and Zach. Been every week in 2020 is like an epic news week, a legendary news week, a tragic news week, an eventful news week. So what's happened this week? How's everyone doing?
Can I tell you about what I stumbled into today?
Sure.
So I was invited to go to this protest thing for getting the governor of California out of office, and I looked around. I was surrounded by Trump supporters everywhere. I was like, oh, I didn't realize this is a Trump thing. And I ended up talking to this gal about we need God back into our law and stuff like that, right? Yeah, so...
not in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She gave
it's
me
funny how the real central... you can't be a strict constitutionalist as they... Well, I'm not going to caricaturize anyone, but I know a lot of Trump supporters say they're strict constitutionalists, and also God and government, but that's not even nearly the worst of their hypocrisies. So it's just standard stuff.
The beautiful thing is, I was running around yanging people.
Yeah, that's good.
It was so much fun. I was like, all right, how much can I get away with before I should, jump away and be my fairy self and yang more people. I put a yang button on, a yang gang button, and I totally am out of place, but I'm definitely in the background of the video camera, so I don't know.
A person I've been trying to yang for months keeps calling him Chang, and I'm getting annoyed now.
So, Faye, is Gavin Newsom not popular in California?
Not at all.
Really, even among the left, or is it just? I mean, you said it was there were a lot of.
Yeah, there was a lot of rent there. I was trying to ask around. Some people don't care that much, but I mean, looking around, because I didn't want to attend unless it was in alignment with my values, or I had somewhat understanding of what the problem was. And what they were upset about was actually because they took away our rights of wearing a mask and having the choice to not wear a mask, and that it's not good for us. And that was one of the main things, but there was a few other things, but they were also trying to get people to register to vote, and they were having all these different petitions to sign. Some were to restore recycling centers, and others were Second Amendment, right? Your guns, don't take our guns. But it was more to on a federal level. If you have permit to carry, you don't have to go through each state's laws to cross the border with a gun or something like that. I don't know. There was just so much stuff that I don't know. But then they had a country music singer on stage, giant printouts of George Washington and the Declaration of Independence, I think that's what it was. But I don't know. It was a lot of song and dance. That's what it looked like. There was this giant muscly man with the biggest Trump flag you've ever seen. He looked like he was a weightlifter.
So, you know what really bothers me about this whole mask thing is that the people who are saying that we shouldn't have to wear masks are the same people who are brandishing the American flag. You just mentioned this guy with the huge flag at the rally, but it's also all over Twitter. A lot of people with the American flag next to their name, they're saying that masks don't do anything. It's just the government trying to control us. They're basically trying to say that they're patriotic by having the flag next to their name. But they're not willing to make... I mean, wearing a mask is such a small sacrifice. It's the smallest sacrifice that you could make that is for the safety and well-being of your neighbor. And even if it turns out that wearing a mask doesn't do anything, I mean, the probability of that is so small and the sacrifice is so small that it's just worth doing.
It's also part of the federal recommended guidelines, so not doing so and then claiming to be patriotic is, like you're saying, a paradox.
Right. If The ultimate patriot is a soldier who's willing to put their lives on the line in defense of their country. If that is the perfection of patriotism, these people are the polar opposites, and they have no business waving an American flag around.
I would love to hear more thoughts about like my experience or anything, like questions, or I don't know, because what would bring you guys to a rally like something like this, or
Need, like, the money to go anywhere. I mean, I never can go anywhere because I really have, like, I live on a zero budget with, like, zero room for error. It's like that episode of Flight of the Conchords where somebody breaks a cup and they can't pay their bills and it's a death spiral. So I don't go anywhere. I would need money.
The thing that would probably turn me away from coming there the most is I am not a highly nationalistic type person. Like, patriotism does not run deep in my bones. So, like, when I get around people like that, it makes me weird and nervous, and like I've got to play performative games with them about my Americanism, and I don't really like that.
what it felt like was all the people with the Trump stuff on. It was like almost a song and dance. It was just like Muscly Man and all the country CDs and the, I don't know, it was very it felt surreal over there. They
Kind of like a carnival version of America.
yeah,
Right.
but
It's a
we're
Oh,
recording
man.
it, so that's what
That's
we see.
terrible. I mean, yeah, I hear you and I believe that experience, but the worst thing to do would be to caricaturize these people because we just need to form alliances with everyone, and you know, it's just it's
Oh
so
no, I
hard.
meant like a literal carnival because you've got the Muscle Man and you've got the song and dance,
Oh,
like
okay.
a literal carnival, like when the carnival comes to town or the fair.
And like when we got there, we were actually harassed by the Parks and Rec people, and then eventually the police officer came by, or the sheriff or whatever. But like it was because we had like the bottle of hogwash, and like somehow that was like the truth that he was trying to sell was somehow the problem. And I was like, well, that seems a bit ironic. But anyway, so like he wasn't able to sell condiments. I'm like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But like to make such a big deal out of something like that and not actually, you know, put attention to the real issues in society, I don't know. And the guy was like, you know, I believe in black and white. This is the sheriff guy, you know, like if I let one person, you know, then everyone blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh man.
I mean, hey, does this event have a name?
Yeah. I don't know what it was called. I can find it later and put it in our chat. But like I just know the hogwash party is what I was part of today, but that's not the actual event.
I really do not want to hear anybody in like a position of great powerful authority to say I believe in black and white. That's not great.
Right? That bothered me actually. I was like, oof, okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
somebody
sort
with
of
like
everybody.
a lethal force option. That's not.
That's sort of like
ideal.
everybody who's like doing cultural
Yeah.
politics these days,
Doesn't work.
except when they, you know, and when it's their friends or some, you know, themselves,
Right,
and
exactly.
all of a sudden then it's
Only time they
Einstein.
humanize them.
But
And
yeah,
consistently, no matter how terrible the thing they've done. But still,
Nuance is so important in every situation. I like any conversation you have, if there's somebody who's reducing the variables involved in what's going on, they are trying to deceive you whether they realize it or not.
we need Adolf Reed on the show.
that would be pretty interesting. I honestly don't know what he would think about UBI.
That's why we need him on the show.
Yeah.
I've kind of switched over from saying the freedom dividend to the data dividend. And I bring up the fact that like Amazon didn't pay anything in taxes. And I said that to a Trump supporter today, and you should have seen his face. Like he was like surprised, but then not surprised, right? And so, but the other gal who's got her Trump hat on too, she was just like, oh, what did she say about it? Not all big businesses are the problem. You know, there's that building over there, she points to something and she's like, they're big business, but they help provide jobs. But it's stuff like Facebook and Amazon and all those other titans, you know, they're more of the problem. And I'm like, I'm not against what you're saying, you know. There are people contributing more than other companies, and It's just the problem is the people are starving, right? I think inevitable needs need to be paid for, at least without predatory businesses and like in control of that.
Yeah, it's like, won't someone think of the second largest class of businesses as like a weird priority to have, right?
We all know the problem businesses, I think, deep down, like, and maybe we're unaware of it too. That's also part of the problem. But like, how are you gonna know unless you investigate, right? How do you know?
I just find it so weird. Like, as somebody who's like listening to this stuff all the time, it feels like I'm being told constantly that Amazon pays nothing in taxes, and yet there's people who still don't know that. It's like I hear that like 5 or 6 times a day in the circle I'm in.
Exiting your echo chamber is one of the
Yeah.
most uncomfortable things to do. I just happened to accidentally exit my echo chamber. Oh man.
I think when you're dealing with something on the level of Amazon, though, people just assume that there's nothing you can do about it. That you don't have the guns to push back against Amazon's government influence in general or anything like that.
And like this woman, she was like, I don't shop with Amazon, the Trump lady. I spent a lot of time talking to her about God and the Constitution and all this other stuff. So, but yeah, so she's a piece of work. I don't know, but she was very like intrigued that I kept the conversation continuing, even though she's like, you don't believe in God. I was like, nah, but stuff like that. I'm not against religion. I think if that's what people need to believe in order to be a good person, then do it. Just humanity first, man. Humanity first.
There's no justification for like isolating other people because of religion. I dislike that entirely. Like, there's no worse religion in my mind than any other religion. There's no better religion. It's just all a structure that we built before we understood science, and I'm fine with whoever wants to believe in that.
Well, one thing I'll say is that I do think religion, whether it's true, whether it's not true, I do think the structure of religion does play or did play an important role in our society. We have less people going to church today, substitute church with whatever religious organization. We have less young people attending Mass than ever before. And at the same time, there is this lack of meaning that's really plaguing a lot of our young people. And it's part of the reason, I think, why we're having record drug overdoses, suicides, mass shootings. When some people need to believe that there is more to this world than what we could see right in front of us. And if they don't, they kind of slide into nihilism, which could become an extremely destructive thing.
Well,
I personally,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Mia.
No, you go ahead. You were first.
There's also, I think, some studies have been done on how people are engaging with religion. Now, it's interesting because overall, more people are moving away from religion, but the ones who do go to religion now tend to be going for a more extreme and, I want to say, like, far conservative version of it instead of the more, like, liberal churches. That's kind of an interesting phenomenon, I think.
I think another factor is probably when you have a church, you kind of have a built-in community that is willing to support you. So if you're not great at going out and finding a community, like a lot of Yang Gang kind of felt like they came home to church when they found the Yang Gang.
Now recording.
So, I think a lot of community is lost without that built-in, like, from birth thing that comes with religion. And I think that trying to help people find more people to connect with is maybe better than relying on the faith portions of it. That's just my opinion, though.
Well, part of it is getting the churches to open up and, this woman pretty much was like, you're not helping because you don't believe in God because you're not following the right truth. And like, she's like, what have you done personally? I was like, well, I let some homeless guy sleep in my truck the other day, and I helped someone else bring 10 bags of food to their family. You know, like, I don't know, these things seem like I'm helping, and I feel like I have affected people with whirlwinds in their life, just by being who I am. And it was almost like she was discrediting my ability to make change because I didn't believe in God. It was like, am I supposed to defend my non-belief to you? Is that, stuff?
Some people literally think it's a part of being moral, that without religion you cannot be moral in any sense. And therefore everything you do is immoral, no matter how good it seems on the outside.
She also said broke people can't help anyone. I was like, girl, I use social currency. Like, and I have like tools in my like truck to help people, and I was just challenging all these like false beliefs that she had. Like, I don't know. It's like, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can make change. But
So this lady sounds like a prime example of what I was just kind of talking about, like the type of people that can fall into nihilism. Like, some people cannot separate God and religion and morality. So then what happens is, if you eliminate the whole religious structure that some people may have their lives built around, you eliminate that, and then all of a sudden morals go out the window too for those same individuals. And that's when you get the problem of certain people doing horrific acts because, they believe that life is meaningless and there will be no consequences in the afterlife, and,
Yeah, but that stems from being indoctrinated in the first place, not from a lack of needing faith. Or you know what I mean.
God, I forgot. There was some moral hierarchy that describes like different levels of progression, and at the higher levels, like, you don't necessarily need punishment to get you to not do bad things. Though, like,
yes,
I'd say somewhere around like the median low, the fear of punishment does keep people in line. And I don't know for adults how much that matters. There's a lot of debate over how much deterrence actually works. I think overall, my attitude on religion or atheism for that matter is that people who want to bend any kind of creed or philosophy to enable them will do so. And people who are generally more pro-social will be either pro-social within a secular or religious context.
So, like, for trying to convince a woman like her about universal basic income, though, I don't know the best approach. Like, that whole group was like somewhat intimidating to me, but I tried to look confident while I talked, but I was definitely not in my element.
Well,
if she's Catholic, then according to the Pope, now is the time for universal basic income.
There you go.
Yeah, actually, I think Catholics are probably one of the more easy people to get on board with that kind of charity and that kind of thing. They can be conservative on social issues, but just take it off social issues and talk to them on like charity and that kind of thing. And I think
you can also make the case that women would choose to keep babies they might otherwise not, because if they have an income, they would be able to take care of that baby.
Yeah, I mean, again, you don't want to necessarily fight on that terrain if you need, unless you have to.
It's true. I mean,
but if they are going to bring up abortion, then be like, well, all right, this is how you can bring it down.
Did you get a chance
that can move them?
Did you get a chance to mention the business creation aspect of having a UBI for your average everyday American to be able to become that entrepreneur and business starter?
These are good ideas, guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna post a link in the Twitter DM chat. It's an excellent article. It's titled "The Christian Case for Andrew Yang." It was posted in January this year, and it's been a resource that I've turned to from time to time.
Didn't you guys just have a pastor on the channel, Christians for Yang? I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. Cool. So how did that go, and what arguments did they bring up?
I think it went really well. I mean, there wasn't any separation in terms of how we approach the subject and what they do. One thing that I really wanted to bring up during the conversation, was able to, was why they felt it was important that the church still exists as a community outreach center, and why that responsibility shouldn't strictly be put upon the state. And And basically the same response from both of them was, well, the church doesn't do any means testing, right? Like if you need help, the church is there to give it to you, and that's what the church's real role in society is to help the needy.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I was there. It went pretty well. Yeah.
But some churches, they almost feel unapproachable, I think. I mean, I've asked a friend of mine in San Diego if I can go to his church while I'm here. I'm very curious to see what it's like because, I mean, the last time I was in church was like over a decade, okay? So, like, but I'm curious. Well, that's a lie. I guess I yanked people in Iowa in church, but like, I guess that was the last time. There was so much that seems very, just the way they preach is very unethical, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's like, shame on you, feel guilty, feel shame. For some churches, I guess.
Yeah, they're certainly not a monolith, you know. Like every church is very different, and I mean that's the reason why there are so many different brands of Christianity. You know what I mean? They really don't. There's a lot of things that they don't agree on, and one of those things is how open should they be to outsiders and whatnot. You know, for example, I'm not super religious now, but the church I was raised in was very open to people, and they were marrying LGBT couples well before that was the thing to do, you know. I was raised Lutheran. At the same time, there's another branch of Lutheran Christianity that is very opposed to all that. So even within certain denominations, there are like large schisms. You know, it's kind of interesting stuff, honestly.
You know, I was thinking back when I was doing Yang Week or Yang Month or whatever. There was a guy from Alaska who got his oil dividend, right, as part of the group. But like part of the idea he had was to call up different churches and just yang the pastors. I was like, that's a good idea, but like I don't know if that ever got done. But like that could be done remotely. But like imagine getting all the community leaders in churches on board with UBI. Like, that would be powerful.
That would be a good outreach program.
But also, like, the schools that are handing out lunches still, you know, I got free lunches just a couple days ago from a school. I mean, it was hard to find, right? It took a local for them to help direct me to where I could get food. But I also got a different bag of food from a church nearby as well. And they ask you, like, how many people and can you cook? Can you refrigerate? You know, that kind of stuff's cool. I actually ran into some of the gals that I had met in the women's shelter when I was last here in a hotel right across the street because that's what the women's shelter put them in. Yet they have like security guards and stuff, but I think they also deliver food there. So, I mean, the people who have sought the services are able to get them, but there's no like connecting network except for word of mouth, I think, because some people don't even have cell phones, you know? These are just things I've seen on the ground. It's really weird being nomadic in this time of the year.
So, what do you guys think about this whole? I don't mean to change the subject. We can continue on this if we want. But what do you guys think about this whole DC statehoodship thing?
I'm curious to know what's the argument against it.
Just basically, it's constitutionally set aside as a federal area, I guess. So it would be a bit of an ordeal to change it and kind of change people's perceptions about like what DC itself is. I think there's the good argument for it is just Americans live there and should have full representation.
I think it's like 50 is a multiple of 10 as like an even number. and then like we're gonna have to like add the star. but I mean that's a very weak, very like just symbolic argument. Why? But you got to think so many things that have to do with like policies and laws and who we elect. We look at symbols so much more than we look at practicality, and I don't like that.
Well, just think about it. How Trump didn't want to change the wording for trans rights because it costs money. I understand that it costs money, but that's a signal to the world that you accept these people as they are.
They
It should be worth the money in order to be more inclusive, and protection is there. I understand that it costs money, but I mean,
The point of capitalism was always supposed to be to encourage us to improve our lives, not make them worse.
right, and it's funny because you mentioned that Amy Klobuchar was actually involved in the push to name ketchup a vegetable because of money and all this other nonsense that they just pull strings here and they pull strings there just because if you're talking about mass production, something that you have to spend a little more on, then you have to spend that little more to produce millions of things, and then that's why they want to cut every corner they can because they're too lazy and dumb to be innovative. So they always look for the easy way out, and they'll always look a way to cut a corner.
I'll print you a new brochure for free.
well, and the thing too is like the American flag's on it, right? So to change just something as simple as the flag because we want to have one additional state, which could or could not, make a difference in the way we run our country. It's back to capitalism, right? Like, oh no, now I gotta spend a bunch of money where I didn't want to.
It's inertia basically. An object at rest tends to want to stay at rest, and that's the establishment that we have.
We could certainly use a rebranding. It would be an opportunity to really spruce that old flag up.
But we can define a to the flag too, right? We could change the overall signal we're sending to the world. At one point I wanted to help create a flag that had the rising sun that you would see in like a Chinese flag, but it's like a brain, and the revolution of knowledge, or what is it? Oh, I can't remember. But something we are rising above and are choosing to think with our brains, think harder. We could really change the symbol of the United States. And colors actually psychologically trigger certain emotions in us as well, kind of subliminally, and we could use all these powerful tools to actually make the world a better place by just subliminal messaging alone.
Well, first we have to get rid of all the disease and the rot, which is all the people, most of the people in power who just want to cling on to the past. I view them as an infection. I view them as a virus. That's just me.
All right, guys. Brace, real quick, guys. Brace yourselves. Get ready. Trigger warning. I'm going to post in the live stream chat a picture of a 51-star flag. All right, just brace yourselves.
Okay.
Go for it.
So one of my concerns, one of my concerns are that I don't care if DC becomes a state, great, but it will. I fear that it's going to ignite an argument over the flag because we do have an evolving flag. If DC becomes a state, we'll have to add a star, which is fine. That's what we should do. But I feel like right now, while everyone's all into tearing down statues and whatnot, I feel like it would spark a call to replace the flag completely. Do you guys share that concern with me, or am I
think
just...
that's kind
flag's
of
been updated.
Yeah, it's kind of a while.
I mean, times in the past. I think as long as you maintain the overall stars and stripes theme, you can probably get away with it for a bit.
But it's sad that we could just throw in an extra star and no one would freaking notice. That's also kind of sad. Right?
I think that personally, I don't have a problem at all with if the flag changes. I do see, however, there are people who are going to have a problem with it and going to throw a hissy fit, and it does not. It's completely irrelevant. Our flag should mean very little other than just representing us at the freaking Olympics.
Honestly, if they're going to have problems with DC's statehood, I think the flag will probably be the weakest of their arguments.
Right. I just think I'm very, very anti-traditionalist, I always look toward the future. I always say like out with the old, in with the new. And if we want to replace the flag just completely from the stars and stripes and stuff, like why the hell not? I don't care. Like yeah.
Well, think of it this way, though. Like we have. Oh, okay. So with changing your name, okay. So recently, I've come to start calling it my awakening name or whatever. People who are given names from somebody else, right? It doesn't feel right to them. And I've noticed anybody who, like when I went to Hollywood, everyone had their, quote, awakening name. And as I've traveled, anybody who seemed a little more put together had some new name because they chose that. They identified as that. They were proud of that. They had, a connection to an origin that just is what they wanted it to be, and not a template someone else gave them. The name Sarah, which is my legal name, I blended in. There was 3 Sarahs at one time who called out when our name, you don't have identity. And part of the thing is, like, if we had a new flag for our country, it would be like having a new name because we could what our generation wants us to be,
I mean,
I had the same problem, by the way. There were 3 other people with my name in my class alone, and like 2 or 3 more in my entire school. Every time somebody said my name, I'd turn around and they would not be talking to me. So I stopped being called by the name I was called, and now I'm Bia.
But you guys are talking about an individual identity. With the flag, that's our national identity. That's the
but
flag
we don't
that's
what
the
our
flag.
country's become. A lot of us.
Yeah.
That is the flag that 500,000 Americans died fighting in World War II against fascism for. That's the same flag.
They didn't die for the flag. They died under the flag. That is a very important distinction.
I also don't think it was that flag, actually. I don't think Hawaii was a state at the time.
Well, it's an evolving flag. It's the same flag. It's just each state gets a star on it.
I don't think they died for a piece of cloth. I think they died for like liberty and freedom and these things that are not tangible objects that you can touch and see. They're things and like they'd come back here and I think they'd be disgusted at like what we're seeing right now.
So the answer is to change the problems, but to change the flag, I mean, you can't just erase 300 years of history.
The flag itself is nothing. It's literally just a picture. It is a picture. They change brands all the time for corporations and stuff. I grew up on Dr. Pepper. When they change the Dr. Pepper can, I don't get pissed off.
So if it doesn't matter to you, if the flag doesn't matter, why even argue to change it in the first place? Because obviously
I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm saying it doesn't matter.
Now, Zach, when you say literally, when you're saying change the flag, you're talking about just putting a star on it, like. I mean,
no. I'm for adding a star to it. That's something that we do every time we have a new state. In the beginning, we had a flag with 13 stars because there were 13 states originally.
Okay, so
our flag is an evolving flag. It's the same flag we've had for 300 years now.
What's the concern with changing the flag, though? Like, what do you think?
The concern is that many people in the Antifa movement believe that our country is irredeemably racist to its bones, and therefore the whole structure needs to be bulldozed over so that something new can be created. And if the flag represents this country, which is irredeemably racist, then therefore the flag, the symbol of the nation, needs to go and be redesigned in its entirety. I feel like that's the logical next step after tearing down the statues of Washington and Jefferson, replacing the national anthem, all this iconoclasm, which kind of happens in every revolution. I think we are in a revolutionary moment in this country.
Yeah.
I think it's closer to like a color revolution, though. I don't think it's very... It's already pretty much just been turned into like corporate sloganeering. I don't think generally if like the biggest power centers of your society are embracing it and are even encouraging it, I don't think that's probably much of a revolution.
There was always that American flag with all the corporate logos on it, the stars. That's a more like honest representation about what this country's become. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, symbols are symbols. You have to look at like what's going on the ground.
I think the biggest risk here is that we start talking about iconography, symbolism, cultural change, to the exclusion of systemic change, meaningful change that leads
Right.
to a more equitable society and
Right, like
functionality, and
yeah.
a more equitable
Well,
distribution of material goods.
but recall comes differently if you have a different, right? So if you have a certain symbolic image, say, right, certain feelings, certain emotions, certain thoughts, right, courage, whatever, right? Native Americans have been stuff like animals, right? But if you have that, like recalling racism and consumerism, other things just by an image itself, could be causing more problems. And if you had a new symbol for people to recall, maybe it becomes a new mantra of sorts, but for your eyeballs.
Yeah. I would personally feel encouraged if the flag changed. I'd feel like, wow, maybe we can change. I'd
Yeah.
feel encouraged. I'd be like, maybe I'm part of something that is not so ossified it can't change. Maybe.
Right.
I don't think it's a really good battleground though. If you want to get any kind of material change, it's culture.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. Really.
Culture symbolism.
I really,
You're going to really split people down the middle,
it's
and
not-
you're going to make
yeah.
enemies for
I-
people who don't. You don't need to
Right.
be enemies with.
It's not
Right.
something I would ever put any
Yeah.
energy into because I don't really care.
Right,
It's just
yeah.
all other things equal. I would, sounds good, change it, but I would never fight for that. I don't
I
give a
think
fuck.
we like what we really should fight for is like against these propaganda machines that turn good ideas into and they try to say like, oh, they really want to like destroy something that we stand for. Like I don't know if you saw, but I posted that response video I did to Robert Kiyosaki, because a lot of like financial predators and gurus out there, they prey on people's desperation for them to buy their book or take their advice or do this. They say, oh, does your life suck? Come join our MLM scheme, come buy our book, come to our seminar. And then now that the idea of UBI is out there, they're like, oh no, you don't want this. It's gonna make you lazy. It's gonna make you this. So I just like shredded the guy to pieces on my response because I just thought it was so disingenuous. I used to look up to some of these people because like I liked when Robert Kiyosaki said that like school doesn't teach you about your finances and how money works and stuff like that. And I used to look up to him a little bit too, but not right now. I see right through them. Yeah.
A lot of those self-help things are cyclical, and their entire point is to not actually improve your life, but convince you instead that you've improved your life so that you get back onto the train again later.
Yeah. It's like, it becomes an addiction. And, there was a secret once said is like, what's the one thing that can't be measured? Like all this self-help stuff. You can't measure. So that's what makes it so addictive. And that's what makes it such a never ending cycle with all this self-help, because that's why they rake in all this cash, because you cannot measure self-help.
It's the God of the gaps principle.
If you really think about it,
Gaps,
like a lot of the Art of the Deal kind of felt like a self-help book. My mom used to read it like religiously to motivate herself because I don't know. I never read it myself, but the things she would talk about, it was on par with a lot of the other motivational books she had on her shelves, where it was about making yourself independent, rugged individualism, that kind of thing that was being sold.
Yeah, and it's all just for these financial leeches to feast on the desperate. I mean, that's the thing, and that's what makes it so gross. It's like the crows, waiting up there for like a carcass to like rot so they can just dine on it. For like a person to, you're in the financial desert, and then you're just about to like faint, and then they're just there to like feast upon whatever's left of you. It's terrible. Yeah.
In the chat, I was talking about it all being like everything that is going on in our country. It's like smoke and mirrors. There's so many shell companies that exist, and like we've become dependent on these little businesses, but they could be a cover for something else in the back, right? And
Yeah, sure.
unless you learn the lingo, you don't know how to get in the back. But that's the problem with our country, right? Like we've
Mm-hmm.
got too much of this like hogwash.
Yeah,
You know?
like the problem with our country is this like cannibalization capitalism right now. That like some asshole wants to like say that this is an opportunity of a lifetime, but I want you to what is it, like put your credit card limit all the way up, max out your credit card limit and invest in this, and then I promise you that it'll be worth it. And then they do a seminar, and then they tell that to all the people coming in the seminar, and then when the opportunity is not the thing that you were counting on or expecting, they say, oh, look at the fine print, it's because you didn't follow this and this and this the exact way I told you to, and then they do this, but it's all just BS.
It's really weirdly reminiscent of the diet what's the word I'm looking for? Market, just in general.
Yeah, that kind of thing, because everyone's looking for a way out of this mess, and then you got these like in Mexico they call them coyotes, the ones that like smuggle people through the border to the United States. But then you got these like financial coyotes in the US that are like, join my program and you'll become rich. It's like they're trying to smuggle you to the land of like financial independence, when all they're really doing is just taking advantage of you and bullshitting you, and you're not going to get anything.
Well, they know you've been fed the information that you're supposed to be able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and therefore they must be the people who have that magical information
Right.
that's been withheld from you.
Right. And then when Andrew Yang's out there and he's offering like a real way out, the real solution, the snake oil salesmen come and tell you that this guy's trying to sell snake oil, but my snake oil is better for you. When Andrew's really trying to give you the cure, but these bastards are telling you that it's snake, because that's the way that they think. They think everybody else is there to take advantage and lie and to screw other people over. That when a genuine human being who has good intentions comes into the fray and actually wants to help, they project their own intentions of just wanting to take advantage of people and bullshit people onto that decent human being.
But that projection expands outside of just that. You could be in a bad neighborhood helping somebody out, and somebody else is like, oh no, that person's bad, but then they realize, oh, that's my cousin. Okay, so like we're so paranoid, and we project all our fears because we don't want to lose our little spot, even though maybe the building you're in is gross and it is in a seedy part of neighborhood, right? But we want to hold on to that little bit of our space, even it doesn't matter how healthy it is. But also imagine what it would be like if marketers would actually like turn their advertising around to actually benefit society and be like, oh, look at all these tools I have at my resources. Why don't I promote like planting trees? Why don't I help promote actual health and like limiting like toxins that we consume like instead?
Beats me. I think if more people come out of the woodwork and just expose these people, it's a good thing, because I mean, like there's just been a proliferation of all these people coming up and wanting to like sell you their opportunity and like and pitching you and this.
But that's the training you get if you want to figure out how to make money. That's the training you'll find on Google and YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not. The problem is there are, of course, always people who are genuine and people who are disingenuous, and it's hard to sort them out when you are in a position of desperation.
For sure. Just because you have a option does not mean it is the only option. You have choice in this world, but if you're like got a boot on your neck, you really have choice.
Like one video I watched on YouTube basically described it as click on one video and you're on the path towards neo-Nazism. Click on the other video and you're on the path towards Medicare for all. But whichever one you click first, that's probably the path you're going to trust first.
Right.
And it's just the way the human mind works. The first person to provide you with an answer that it doesn't reject is the person who must be right.
Right, and if you're in the desert and you're like you're gonna die of thirst, and someone offers you a glass of water when you're dying of thirst, like you're more thinking about drinking the water than checking it if it's poisonous. But if you're just randomly walking down the street and it was the same scenario, you're like, damn, I don't need your water. So that's why they prey on the desperate.
But we also don't reward and incentivize a better option. And how do we incentivize people to do better messages to the world?
That's a difficult thing to say because with the whole free speech thing, everybody has a right to get their message out there, and whoever follows, you choose to follow. Incentivizing at the moment is done by the size of your audience, not by the genuineness of your approach.
Right. It's all just like a competition of who can get the most clout, who can get the most eyeballs, and people listen to them instead of just being a decent human being.
That's a problem because often it's the most ridiculous people who can get the most followers. You say something crazy,
Trump.
people are going to want to follow. Yeah, right. Trump, prime example, Exhibit A.
Right. And that only happens when the powers that be have just been so bad and so incompetent. I look at it more of an indictment on the Democrats more than anything else. It's like you were so bad and so terrible that Trump won. Trump winning says a lot more about how detached the Democrats have became than it actually says about Trump winning. It's like if you get like in a boxing ring and a toddler knocks you out, it's not that it was like a super toddler. It's because you've become so bad at whatever you were supposed to do or whatever you were supposed to take care of that like a person like this could beat you.
But what's interesting is they don't see it. They don't see themselves as something that can fail. They see it as something that can only be failed. They look at the push for the last 4 years has been essentially to blame voters, like some quality that voters have that either makes them not moral enough to vote for the Democrat or so racist or I don't know, sexist or whatever you want, that they literally are flawed on a fundamental level as your potential customers, as your voter base.
More projection.
Well, okay, also think of this, though. We have career politicians. They get in there, they got their health taken care of, they got all their basic needs met. Then if that's taken away from them, they're threatened with entering back into the world the rest of us are living in, right? They're no longer protected like they were. Their needs aren't as met, and so it's more of a survival issue at that point. Instead of changing it so that they can survive out there, which is kind of the point of their position. They're just trying to stay in it so they don't have to go back into that world. It's almost become an aversion because this is the better life, but that's part of the problem. And then we got issues with term limits, people are getting in there so that they can stay in that safe bubble.
Incentives have got to change.
Well, it's almost like they shouldn't have that kind of cushy protection.
Right.
That. But
are you saying government should be a volunteer job?
I mean, maybe that might be a little more authentic.
No, it should be they should get merit. It should be paid on what you get done. Kind of if you're a person on commissions, if you don't produce results, that's going to be on you because you're not getting anything.
So paid based on how your state does on the American scorecard?
Right, yeah. It should be tied to something.
Hang on here. So if you have that kind of system, there are two problems that arise. Number one, poor people can't run for office because you'd have to have money already by the time you get in. And number two, it would open up the door for people to take more dark money from lobbyists. Because if they don't get a salary, you're going to have to take money from somewhere.
Oh, but
it didn't work out in education is another good point, because that is kind of the stance they took with the schools and the No Child Left Behind thing, where you paid them only if they did a good job, and that just ended up underfunding the schools.
Well, Well, what is it? No, that it's illegal for them to do that if to get the dark money too. But the thing is that like we're like No Child Left Behind was for test scores. It shouldn't be merit pay tied to test scores. That's what they did wrong because they're idiots. It should be merit pay tied to like how engaged and are the kids and how much do they want to do the work and stuff like that, not
Which it
test scores.
technically some of the test scores improve based on how much they're engaging with the kids and stuff. The point there is the problem is more you are underfunding people who need more help to do well, and then funding more people who are already doing well, and then expecting something to change in the other direction. And it's a good intentioned idea. I do get it, and it feels like it logically should work, but in the end it doesn't.
Also, I mean, this is something that Andrew Yang talked about, where the largest indicators of student success actually take place outside of the school. You know, things like number of words read by the time you're 2 years old. You know, and if you have a school district where the majority of the kids are growing up in single parent homes with a small income, there's going to be a lot of stress in those home environments. And it's going to produce students that have difficulties learning or don't even want to learn. You know, you really got to. And so therefore, I have a buddy that works in one of these school districts in Brooklyn that's is struggling. And, you know, it's the teachers can only do so much. You really need policy that addresses the underlying causes of the problems. That's where UBI comes in.
Yeah. UBI, the dream.
It's just like it just makes every other problem easier to solve. Just yeah, it's yeah. But
That's because it literally makes every other problem easier to solve, because one of the 3 things you need in solving any problem is time, money, and dedication.
And money creates time. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can pay somebody else to help you.
Right.
Right. They're intrinsically linked, money and time. You know, the saying "time is money." I mean, it's kind of true. You know, I mean, most people their income comes from their labor, and labor is a function of time plus skill. So, I mean, it's all part of the same formula.
Or at least it's supposed to be linked that well. I mean, it's we kind of have a breakdown in that dynamic going on right now, where we aren't compensating equal to the amount of labor. But the concept is that money equals time. Yes.
Well, it's skill. The value of skill, which is part of that formula, is being suppressed by other factors like automation. You know what I mean? You don't really need. I'm trying to think of a good example here, but if you're like an assembly line worker, for example, and the company could just, you know, buy a robot to do that job, well, I mean, then they're probably going to try to pay their assembly line workers a hell of a lot less because there's more competition within the labor market. The same thing with like offshoring and immigration and just more people in the labor market than ever before. All those things put a ton of downward pressure on what employers are willing to pay for a certain skill.
Well, when I was growing up, for example, they used to actually give bonuses to the bag boy who could put the most bags in as fast as possible. Now that we have self-serve, that is no longer something that is incentivized. It's a skill that was incredibly valuable at one time, and now people would look at somebody whose skill was being the fastest bagger and tell them they weren't worth anything.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is we don't have wordage to evolve these different skills. You know, if we could reword our skills and adapt it to a new, you know, more humanity first venture, then we could have these things like matter. But if you're just, you know, quick bag checker, you know, it doesn't translate, right? That's part of it too. You got to find like what the base skills are being done at the physiological level. Is that what I'm trying to say?
Most of those skills are easily replaceable, though, in most in any project where there is repetition, you're going to be replaced now. So a bag checker is never going to return back to his original value no matter what job he's placed in.
Right, and this even affects a lot of white collar jobs too, and I think we're going to see this more and more, like things like accounting, which is really very mathematical. So, like, it's all based in math. The more accounting software that comes out that could just run autonomously, there's going to be more and more companies deciding to use this software instead of having 40, 50 accountants working for the company. They're not going to be as prone to giving bonuses, and they're going to start capping wages, because if somebody's making six figures, why not just replace them with a computer technology is there?
There was a time when a high school diploma could just get you a job that in some kind of factory that you could support an entire middle class family with, and you didn't need like a bachelor's or a master's and all that stuff. But then I wonder, like, why would they have, in Beverly Hills High where I went, like still a factory method of educating people? In California where I lived, there was no factories, there was no manufacturing. It's really stupid.
Because they're set up to build a certain kind of worker that was existing in a previous generation that no longer exists.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's a huge manufacturing sector in California still, especially even in Hollywood. I mean, it's still a very real thing.
Well, we were never made told about any of that. I don't think it was near Beverly Hills. That.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of there being a bell telling you when class is over and when the next class starts, I mean, that's a factory thing. The bell rings at lunchtime, the bell rings at the end of lunchtime, get back to work. That kind of Pavlovian, like Pavlov's dog. It's a kind of programming that...
we legitimately needed people who could do just factory work. We needed a shit ton of people who could do factory work. Mass-producing factory workers was a great idea at the time when the system was implemented.
It's interesting that Ariel was not made aware of the factory work that was happening right pretty much around him. That's interesting,
Yeah.
How do you think that happened, Ariel?
It's kind of, well, I mean, I lived in Bel Air, so like those are like up a house in the hills, or Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is known for its like stores and shops, not for its manufacturing at all. Zero, like hardly, like the affluent areas of like LA have no manufacturing, or at least
I half wonder if it's that they thought that people living in affluent areas would never need a job in manufacturing.
Yeah. But the schools were designed in the affluent areas, no different from the schools in like the manufacturing areas in like Ohio or Michigan or something like that. So it's really dumb.
Yeah, manufacturing jobs can be a little shaky, especially when you look at places like Youngstown, Ohio, which Yang talks about at length in his book. But in general, U.S. manufacturing is still a very valid career path for I would say for a heavy percentage of Americans. And if you were looking for a job, it's not unreasonable to imagine making over $20 an hour after 6 months. And also, people's often their interpretation of manufacturing is also probably a little misguided. Like when I got into it, I really didn't want to, right? I took the job as kind of a last resort option kind of thing, right? But then once I got in there and found that no, it's not this like dystopian fucking hellscape. It's actually a really rewarding and a great job. I genuinely enjoy what I do.
You do something tangible that can't be overstated, because most Americans don't produce a tangible result. It's inherently satisfying, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And it's also important to note that not all businesses or manufacturing places run their businesses the same either. You are absolutely right. There's plenty of them that do a good job and follow regulations and do things appropriately, and it can still be a viable career path in this time.
Jeremy, so I believe you're a machinist, right? What kind
Correct.
of company do you work for? What do you guys produce anyway?
We make highly custom parts for all different types of industries. So we do stuff for railroads. We do a lot of aerospace and aviation. We do some electronics work. We do stuff related to the grid and electricity. I mean, anything and everything, man. Medical work. We run the gambit. It's not just one thing that we really specialize in. It's multiple sectors.
Cool. So, like, in other words, if somebody needs a unique part for something, they would call up your company and send over the blueprints, I guess, and you'd man the machine to produce the part.
Yes, that exactly. Yeah, yeah. The tolerances too on some of the stuff, like the level of precision that we make these parts, sometimes it's like really incredible. All right, so when we measure, we deal with everything within thousandths of an inch, right? So if some like very actually I would say very often if a measurement is 0.002 oversized, then it's a bad part, which is that's half the width of a human hair.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, Yank said the best. He said, like, why did we get rid of, like, wood shop classes in high schools and then tell everybody to do all these theory-oriented things? Is because they're a bunch of lazy asses. It's so much easier to make a book than it is to make, like, something that can build something or can produce something. It's like, okay, let's just be cheap, lazy, and stupid and deprive a whole generation of, like, meaningful work that can fulfill them. Bunch of assholes.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's that the incentives were wrong for schools. We were basically separating schools between the good and bad based on what percentage of students went to college after school, instead of trade school and whatnot.
Yeah.
So like a high-ranking school would basically be one that told their students, you don't want to go to trade school. That's for losers. That's essentially what my high school did. And a lot of
my high school did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible. Like they should be punished for that. Assholes. Like, seriously. What is it any of your damn business what I decide to do with my life, or what I like, or what I enjoy, or what I want to explore, or what I want to see?
I think what we need to pay more attention to, though, is we shouldn't be doing the blame. It's like, I did this thing the other day. It's like, I don't care whose it is. I can't, right? And I was just talking, I had allergies, smog here in the city, right? I don't care.
Yeah.
Problem, right? But that could be translated to what matters.
It's kind of frustrating when it's like years and years and years of bad ideas. Just like
they really. I know that it doesn't seem like it because of how badly it's resulted, but none of these people entered into these scenarios thinking, I'm going to be the asshole that destroys America. They really did believe what they were doing was best. They were wrong, a lot of them, but they do believe it. So to punish people for actions they didn't know the consequences of directly is hard.
Yeah, it takes a lot of critical thinking to see a bigger picture, and unfortunately that's a lot of what we don't get when we grow up. When we grow up, it's like we only see like very surface level. We only see the cover of the book, but it's like, don't judge a book by its cover. But what you can do, if you have a little more time, is like you judge a book by its back cover, because that kind of you don't have time to like read the entire book, but at least like the thing on the back has a little like synopsis, and it's not just the title. So people can at least do that.
We definitely to have an entertaining back cover, though, to get more people to read into Andrew Yang. I mean,
that's for sure.
We could try at our own personal levels. I mean, what we're doing here, a good entrance into what he has to say. But I mean, we're the girth of the book, if you want to look at it that way. But how do we get people into the door? And for me, that sometimes that's just inviting people I know onto the show, and then they talk about it because they're excited that they were on the show, and that they were heard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the best thing. Like just for people to get heard. Like that's what leads to so much like young people having angst and frustration and just not being happy is that like if your parents don't hear you out and your teachers don't hear you out, well of course you're not going to be happy. So like there should always be a place that, people can get heard, or else like who's representing them, who's actually like, and then people don't get heard, and then some marketing guru comes along and says like, oh, you deserve to be heard, but you only deserve to be heard after you buy my overpriced whatever you might call it. So like these people who need couch time are like coming into these like sales courses and self-help courses and stuff. But if they were just heard to begin with, the guy said like it's better to create like functional kids than to help broken adults.
Well, it's not just that. It's like every time you talk to a person, you are like telling them maybe your dream, and then they're like, well, that's not possible. That's not possible.
Yeah, it gets bothersome, and that's why. I mean, like, and then it's like when all your schools expect you to do is to just like finish up your work, and then they don't care if you end up with a dead end job or no work to do at all because there's an economic crash. I mean, like you got to have some empathy for Generation Z. I mean, like if you're a millennial and you just lost your job and you're getting those like extended unemployment, like that's something. Let's say you were Gen Z and you were just about to graduate university and you were planning on going into some lucrative careers like a lawyer or doctor, and then this pandemic hits, and then your job prospects are just as low. But like it's a mess. It's a mess.
But now all the people who have become the haves, it's the haves versus the have-nots, right? Like we have all this money, look how great we did, and you have no money, so look how terrible you've done. And so obviously we're the ones that have it right.
Well, there wasn't a worldwide pandemic when they were creating their wealth.
That's kind of got the flavor of like prosperity gospel, and that the idea that you are somehow more virtuous because you managed to make more money. When most religions, and I'm not a fan of religions, but most religions will tell you the more money you have, the more corrupt you are. You can't, something about not being able to get into heaven if you or it's as difficult as threading a camel through a needle or something along those lines from the actual Christian Bible, if I remember correctly.
Like camel through the eye of a needle.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I bothered to read that, but
this was so funny. I was watching this video called GOP Jesus. It's like, I was in need and you gave me something. Why did you do that? Now I've become lazy. Yeah, it's really funny.
Well, even my grandpa like shames me for not having any money, or any older generation. They're like, you need to stop and get a job. I'm like, I feel like I'm doing success for this country individually through the work that I know is in alignment with my values per individual person that I contact than I could ever do working a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm trying to reach places that people won't pay me to go. They don't pay me so that I don't go there. Like if money was my incentive, I would have never found different outlets, right? But
Yeah.
I get to carry the burden of the shame that all these older generations put upon me. They're like, no, settle down, do what you got to do, and stand in line.
They didn't grow up with the internet and like this level of technology, and I bet they never had to deal with an ATS system in their lives, and all this other crap that technology is great, but at a certain extent it like ruined job opportunities and money making opportunities because of all the gatekeepers like it's putting in place, and all these algorithmic systems that like sort people out, and they never had to deal with that. So I challenge one of these people. I challenge them to empty their bank accounts and start all over from scratch and see if they'll take that up.
There's actually too many of them actually going through that right now. My grandpa used to have a successful trophy shop. And then the internet started taking over, and the engraving was being done at home, and he's having to close the shop. So they are actually having to start over, a lot of them, especially the ones who like picked up businesses and weren't able to adapt quickly. And we shouldn't actually expect them to adapt quickly. Those people, because they have lived their lives, they have a certain set pattern, and trying to change them like on a dime is unfair to them too. We gotta care about everyone. It's impossible to say somebody did wrong, so don't care about them anymore.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that older generations shouldn't be judging us, and at the same time we shouldn't be judging them. And that's why, like what you said, I think the whole just get a bunch of coal miners and turn them into coders is the dumbest idea on the face of the earth.
Well, all these people have built these empires, right? These empires have been working very efficiently and very well, and then automated and rift what they. If they don't know how to take the time to learn our technology coming in this world, 100 years behind in technology, not literally, but and so you're entering a different empire that's outgrowing, and creative, and we don't value our trash bigger empires behind, right? And maybe they need to, because maybe a person in China is killing themselves. Stop to think about, where did that come from? What was the origin of that? That might have been the face of the person who made it. We need to switch over to what we have.
You were cutting out a lot through this.
Sorry, I don't know what was missed. It's okay. Someone else can talk now.
I'm sorry.
About a person in China killing themselves. That's
killing themselves for our empires is what I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the context was cut out because she kept dipping in and out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I thought it was me. I thought I was cutting in and out.
Well, am I coming in clear now?
That was better.
Okay. Well, I'm saying the empires that we made, maybe it's a cool little walking stick, but maybe some child in China was 6 years old and killing themselves putting it together, right? We're so disconnected from the source of who created our things as well. I think we recognize the impact we have.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that, because when I ordered this chair and it came in pieces and I was putting it together, at first it started annoying me, but then later it became fun. And then when I finally finished it and I'm looking at it right now, I'm like, hey, I did that with my hands and with my brain, and now it's all put together because of me. Yeah, it feels good. Yeah.
I've actually been doing a ton of furniture assembly lately through the app TaskRabbit. I definitely recommend it if anybody's looking for work in general. Just using TaskRabbit to do various things, and one of the things on there that you could do is just assemble furniture, and it's mostly all IKEA and Wayfair stuff. That's pretty easy. It comes with the tools that you need. You just got to have the patience to go through the directions, and it usually takes a few hours to assemble something, but it's pretty decent money.
In where I'm at, there's no TaskRabbit, there's no Uber, there's no Grubhub. I wish that some of those sorts of job opportunities for the gig economy would actually show up here, because there's some ways to make money that are not available to rural communities where they don't have a large base yet.
Yeah, that's a problem. Kind of got to be in a good area for it. Oh,
Yeah, sorry,
so
man. I don't really, I don't recall. What part of the country are you in?
I am in Cadillac, Michigan, which is it's technically like some parts of it are kind of urban rural, and then some of it's more rural. It depends on where you're at. You know, the small town feel. Did I cut out?
Oh no, I got you. Actually, I'll be up in later on this year. I hope. Not Cadillac, but the UP.
They named after the car.
Yeah, we're named after the car.
Interesting.
So, I that point that Mia you were just making before about people being disconnected from the stuff we consume. You know, like the products are being made elsewhere, and we're not really connected to it anymore. That actually kind of reminds me of like an argument that Joe Rogan makes a lot for why people should hunt instead of just buying commercially farmed animal food, basically. You know, like he says he goes hunting, he'll kill an elk, and that will be enough meat that he needs for a year. But a lot more care and appreciation goes into the hunt, and you just value the meat that much more. And if we move away from this cruel commercial farming system that we have and move towards more of like a hunting based system, we'd probably be less wasteful as a society in terms of like wasting food.
I think you credited me for that point, and that was actually Faye's, and it was a good point, and I also liked your input, just as a side note.
Yes, sorry, Faye. Sorry.
These are not my ideas. They're ideas from the universe, so I don't need credit. I'm just a receptacle of ideas.
We are fair and balanced on the Yang Gang Roundtable.
It's great that Joe Rogan has the agency to be able to make that lifestyle choice, but he's a millionaire, a multimillionaire, and you have to be a millionaire almost to live. Well, I mean, that's not entirely true. You can go live in a cabin in the woods and hunt for your food, but you're making other sacrifices then. So to live both with one foot in society and one foot in naturalism, shall we say, you need a lot of money. And a UBI would help a lot more people to make that choice if they felt like it was the right one for them.
This is why I like fake meat.
Yeah, I'd buy more fake meat if I had more money too. I'd go out of my way more to find it.
Some people don't realize the origins of meat, though. They just think it comes from a grocery store because their education is so low. But, I saw one thing on Twitter one time. This guy thought the ATM actually printed the money right there. Right? He was so disconnected from the source of what this was or where it comes from. That's happening in all sorts of areas of life for so many who are undereducated.
I am so excited about the future of lab grown meat. It's because think of all the possibilities of anything that you could print, right, or grow. Like you could have like a panda steak. You could eat elephant. You could eat lion, right? Like the options are fucking endless.
It's just all about the arrangements of proteins and fats to make something that replicates the same thing. It's technically made of the same exact stuff. So, yeah, panda meat. That's a new market.
Funny. That's not where I thought this was going to go. But yeah, absolutely, more choices.
But yeah, I am with Zach there too. I do think hunting your own game is highly rewarding, and if that is accessible to you, then you should give it a shot if you never have before. It's great.
Also, more animals might be saved because they realize a creature that has I shouldn't be eating a million hamburgers.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, society serves to get in between the reality of where your resources come from, and that subverts the natural appreciation for and the natural good judgment regarding those resources a person would have. And then you create a perverse incentive of the people who are in charge of society to preserve that misunderstanding because it preserves their position of power. So
it's like my friend called it a terrarium. It's like we're used to this terrarium, but like out there is just so much different. Well, isn't that what like school is when we're younger? That's
what society is in general. Yeah. I mean, we are self-domesticating animals. It's not like we are teaching ourselves to become more feral. We are intentionally hurting ourselves into different areas, becoming more specialized. It's a choice we are actively making, and we have to choose how we're going to domesticate ourselves in the future.
But
I want. Oh,
we can live in abundance too. But go ahead, Faye.
I wanted to mention something that we make 4 times more food for the animals that we eat than we actually would. So, like, we are making more food for animals. We could feed our population with that, like, land to just use for raising cow food. Okay, to feed our own humankind in a way that is even more ethically driven. You know, there's so much cows and all the methane stuff going. You know, all poop getting into our that drains in.
You're cutting out in and out again, but that is another good argument for fake meat.
Well, I'm just saying, waste of resources for us to raise so much meat.
Yeah, it's insane how much water they consume too, compared to, like, it's not just the food we feed them; we feed them insane amounts of water as well.
And then we even have like avocados that are grown in the area, and so they take up so much water, and now we have droughts. And then avocado fields are being, like, people who own them are held hostage and dying over avocados, and we love spreading the avocados on our toast, you know, or whatever we eat it as. And we don't even know where the source of our food is coming from, and how much sacrifice into it, how much emotional pain has been caused because someone else is exploiting that.
Oh man, I'm gonna feel terrible when I have my next guacamole.
I mean, but we don't know these things happen until we have reporters on the ground exposing stories, right? But it's not safe to be a what do they call it? Where you expose somebody, whistleblower. It's not safe to be a whistleblower in this country.
Yeah, look at Snowden. Yeah, it's just like the lid on the NSA. It's like all this power just wants to like protect itself, and it like power has all these incestuous relationships with itself, and it's really bad. And that's why Yang had so much trouble getting a word out.
Yeah, but like, I mean, a lot of the homeless people that I've, you know, I'm using the word interview. I'm just having conversations, but they know stuff about our country in our country, and they've been forced. So like, that's the homeless type, and or other people who are being victimized by even just abusive partners, and that's what put them in homeless. But like, there's so much scary out there that the people who could make a difference are being attacked. You know, I mean, I've been stalked and harassed by people that I tried to be a whistleblower on, and it was scary. I lost a job over it, okay, because there was, you know, only 3 male moderators, cuddle website that spanned the whole world, and I was like, women are being sexually harassed and you know, raped on this site, and next thing you know, I'm fired, right? And it's just not safe, you know. Your whole livelihood could be attached to the money that you're getting from that site, and to say something and stand up is not safe.
Another great argument for UBI, because if you don't have to worry about being fired because you will lose everything you have and be put out on the streets, then you might be more inclined to tell the truth if somebody's doing something shady under your nose.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you could be doing anything to be sexually harassed. I'm sitting in the back of my truck, just cleaning it out, right? And this guy pulls up in his vehicle behind my car and gets out, and he's like, "Want to earn some money?" And I was like, "If it's in alignment with my values." And he's like, "A blowjob?" And I said, "No, right? That's not in alignment with my values." And he went away. But I wasn't doing anything to even be provocative to get that kind of thing. And that's what money can buy, though, is dehumanizing a person.
Yep.
It's sick.
It's pretty sick. It's pretty gross. That's it, and it takes away a person's freedom, the desperation, because it's like, well, like if you were on your, you know, last dollar and stuff and all of that, but I mean, I'd still say no. But the thing is like, it's like you can't you can't put the gun of poverty to people's heads and then say you have freedom, but then you say like, but the only way that we put like prices on things and it's illegal to steal, but the only way you can afford to like get those things is if you do something that's not dignifying and
If
is
you
not
submit to the will of
Yeah.
somebody who has more money than you.
Right, exactly.
Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is dependent on the person who has you under their thumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
For
so
example,
that's not freedom. That's bullshit.
what happened to Faye there, and I'm very sorry that happened to you. That's terrible.
It's not even the first time it's happened to me.
But that guy, it didn't stop with you either. He got a no from you, and I guarantee he just kept on asking more women until he got somebody who was in a desperate enough situation that they would say yes, and he feels empowered by that. You can't stop that as long as there is, like, no other choice for a person. Somebody who is less free than you, less nomadic at the moment, and has a kid waiting at home who needs a gallon of milk to be able to survive the next day is going to be like, yes, please.
Yep, and women who haven't say no also in their head their body is doing things because I need that food, or they spent the money that they got off, and so they're like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing now. I've met other women who've been in similar situations. Just this, I have money, here, do the thing I want you to do. Song and dance, please.
I really feel like that would also be a very strong argument for your Christian friends, is the keeping women out of morally compromising positions thing.
I agree. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that is a very good argument.
And also, all these women who were Jeffrey Epstein, all the women conditioned to do sexual favors who never learned how to say no. That guy who comes up, she becomes, re-victimized. You're 1 to 11 times more likely to be re-victimized sexually if you've already been sexualized, especially if it was before your 18th birthday. Your brain is still developing, and so that's what you've learned is okay. And so we have a pyramid scheme of women who don't know how to say no, in addition to all the other stuff.
Yeah, this country has a really dark, ugly side to it. That's like, yeah, that we don't get on the typical news, And, that's because we're margining voices.
But for me to speak about this is only because I'm okay being my authentic self. A lot of people haven't found their authentic voice either, and or feel safe enough to speak. What can they take away from me? At this point, nothing. They could probably humiliate more if that's what has to happen for the real truth to come out. But some people, they have hordes of people coming after them off of like rumors sometimes.
Yeah, that bandwagon effect.
I don't think any of these issues are unique to the United States either. This is a worldwide problem, I would say.
Oh yeah, the whole world needs UBI.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, ever since the beginning of time, like, if a person was a have and the other person was a have-not, the have was like, do a little song and dance for me, and I'll give you a little something. And the have could have lied. You could have done your song and dance, and you could have not have gotten anything, because who are you to like stand up for yourself or like get what they promised you, because they it's very compromising.
That happened with Trump. He was building the Taj Mahal casino, and upwards of $60 million in labor wasn't paid, right? And then he gets a break and released of all of that. He stole $60 million worth of just like labor from people.
Yeah.
And what did they get?
Nothing. Right.
It's as easy as pretending you don't have the work hours documented for some employers. Like, you can just say, oh, I'm sorry, nobody remembered to clock you in or out, and you did that work, and it's for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, how do we make these accountable? The
Well,
only
what?
way I'm seeing it effective is people going on Netflix and exposing these big titans and putting their whole lives at risk, including threats from other people. If that person has any followers, you're going to be attacked. I mean, the person that I exposed from the Cuddle website that started harassing and threatening, it was his friends. They believed in this person, right? And they're like, no, we're just going to harass this chick because how dare she say anything wrong about this person I care about, when maybe they were also part of the problem.
That just happened like yesterday or the day before. There was some black guy with his kids in the car, and some lady, she looked like she was on meth. She was like, "Oh, this is my car. This is my car." But it wasn't her car. And then these other like screwed up looking bikers came to the car and said like, "Hey, this is her car." So he had to like drive out of there, and they were just like harassing him with his kids in the car. I mean, yeah, so it's very scary, like when it's one person's word against another person's word. There needs to be some documentation, and even then it depends on how much more resources people have to like get others to believe them.
The only way the fact that we've been recording, sharing, having eyeballs the person, that is the only way I've seen. Even with this Black Lives Matter, we have video camera brutality, but to say someone wasn't just planted there to create mayhem, we don't even have honesty within what we see either, but it's hard to tell the truth unless we all like chip in with what we see and hear and document proof. Seems to be the only
So like a people's surveillance state?
something.
It's so weird. It's easy to think of solutions, and the longer you think about them, the more problems you find with your solutions, too. It's hard to come to a place where everybody's happy,
Yeah, they're complicated. But I just think it's the overall environment that creates, and it goes back to UBI, that like an environment of desperation and scarcity creates a lot of these problems that we're seeing, and a lot of these negative behaviors. So if you just do something to kind of like quell that and solve, get that into place, then I think that like most people are naturally good. There's like called the shopping cart theory. How many people like go to the grocery store, put their groceries in, and return the carts? Like almost, it's only like 3 or 4% of people, maybe 10 tops, who don't return the carts.
Right.
But that's that. But the reason I think we're seeing so much of this deviant behavior is because, first of all, sociopaths who have a lot of stuff and they like taking advantage, but also like desperation.
Well, people who are like sociopaths and like a lot of stuff tend to work themselves into situations where they have more stuff and then tend to use that stuff to lord over other people.
But okay, so I have this friend who is a male nurse, and he had a lot of property and all this beautiful stuff and horses and everything. But he was lonely in his marriage and ended up cheating because it had been a while since they even showed love to each other, right? But now she gets everything because of the laws that are in that state. And he is working himself to death just to pay off his bills now. And so he's become enslaved to the things that he once loved, right? Because of a situation of the heart, and it's just, we don't even have a safe escape if we are getting out of bad relationships, if to stay out of debt, because she didn't want to sell anything, and he couldn't pay off things based on it. It's impossible to restart in this country. He loses this little empire he's himself, but that's happening left and right,
Well, one thing we've lost from earlier civilizations was they used to actually just like occasionally forgive debt, like as part of their system. When it became too big of numbers for them to be able to handle, they would just be like, "We're done with it. Everybody starts fresh."
What civilization was this? Please let me know so I can.
Oh, I gotta look it back up again. It's been a while since I read that, but I will find it and I will give it to you the moment I can.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think it was
thank
a
you.
big common thing in like the Bronze Age and like the Iron Age. Maybe even I can't remember if the Romans ever had a real jubilee or not, but if not them, then like not too long prior.
Quick Google search shows it was a popular thing back in old Judaism. Every seventh Sabbath year saw the wiping away of all debts.
Well, hell, let's get that back.
Yes, I agree.
When they talk about go back to religion, religious roots, right? Can we do that one?
Again, it wasn't all religious, and it was oftentimes between nations instead of like individuals. But you would also have the individuals, like with the Judaism, like I think it was Jeremy who just said that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a common or commoner practice. One that nowadays you would see it as like sacrilege to even propose the idea that people should not have to pay back their debts just because they can't afford to pay back their debts.
Right, what a concept, right? We're in the negative. Like, good luck if you have bad credit because of this pandemic. Good luck if you have bad I don't know, anything. We're just shamed and continuing to try and get a foothold. We have nothing to stand on.
The problem is the people who feel like shame about their situation. That's the problem. It's not, if all those people who felt shame could just redirect that shame and say that the people who have built this system should be the people who have should have the most amount of shame for building such a shitty, terrible, one-sided system. If they could say, oh, them, then things can change. And I think we're kind of seeing that. And that's the good news.
Well, okay, but then you have people building websites to do collections, so that's being automated, trying to get collections too. And so that person's money, right? And the person who built the website wants that money too. And then it's like, but you're predatory of who have no money. They don't see the problem there. But it could be somebody you cared about. So now you're like, well, I don't want you to not get paid for doing this job. And maybe it's the breadwinner. So you're like, I definitely want you to get paid to come after someone else predatory, like, repo's so unsafe. Like, people can shoot guns at each other, apparently, if you're crazy.
Yeah, complicated.
If there was more giving in our country, I think we would be a lot happier. Or forgiving. But it's so hard, right, when we've been wronged.
Well, if you don't build it in institutionally, then your public gets the idea that it's not necessary, and you have what we have now. Giving and being fair and all that, those are things that a society defines. And if your society isn't defining it, then other people are going to internalize that.
This has been a wonderful conversation, by the way, guys.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff's come up.
I'll just say what Bill Hicks said. The problem isn't the lack of food, water, money, food, water, or land. The problem is that you've given control of these things to a group of greedy psychopaths who care more about maintaining their power than helping mankind.
Powerful statement.
Yep. Yeah. That's all we have to understand. And when we understand, then, we can fix this mess.
Well, thank you, everybody. I enjoyed learning with you today. Taking the time to understand.
Yeah, I think the more we talk about these things, hearing each other's
likewise. We're all kind of figuring it out together.
It's necessary. But also, I like the fact that I'm like getting in there and actually experiencing it on a ground level to share it with you guys too. Some days are harder, but I think what I learn and experience is helpful to this group, and you all have your own unique contributions. So, it's beautiful because I couldn't do anything with the knowledge I give you, not by myself, but collectively, if we know the problems and the source of the cancer, then it's easier to fix, right?
Every little bit of knowledge we share with each other is something we can take into another conversation the next time we're talking to somebody.
This ongoing conversation is really an ongoing journey, and just happy to be part of it.
Me too.
We've got about 5 minutes left. Should we start doing outros?
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Let's do that. I want to go ahead and start with you, Ariel.
Okay. You can find me on Ariels _ Armada on Twitter. So that's ARIELS _ ARMADA. I'm Revolutionary Thinking on YouTube, and I just uploaded a video yesterday debunking Robert Kiyosaki's stereotypes on a UBI, where he did zero research, and so the person that was interviewing him. And if you like watching drone photos, and if you're into aerial, you can find me on Instagram at Ariels _ Ariels. So that's ARIELS _ AERIALS.
Thank you very much, Ariel. Faye Doney.
Hello, my name is Faye, and my Twitter handle is Tisdone. TISDONE.
Thank you, Faye Doney. And Jeremy.
Hey everybody, this is Jeremy. Thanks for tuning in today. You can follow me on Twitter at JeremySammons1. That is JeremySammons and the number 1.
Thank you, Jeremy. And Mia.
My name is Mia. You can find me on Twitter at Mia Songbird. One word, spelled as it sounds.
Thank you, Mia. Moto.
I am Moto, and if you want to, you can follow me on Twitter at Moto _ Motes. That's MOTO _ MOTES.
Thank you, Moto. And Zach.
Thanks for listening, everybody. You can find me on Twitter at Zach, ZACH _ Sacher, SACHER. And you can also follow me on YouTube at The Liberal Conservative Report. I just had Fred the Felon on. We talked about him, how he found Andrew Yang and the Yang Gang, the Trump rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which he was just at, and stocks. So if you're into that stuff, check it out.
Thank you, Zach. I didn't know that he was at that rally. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it up earlier when we were talking about Faye being at the rally, and then I just wasn't able to get it in there, and then we changed subjects.
Well, yeah, plenty of time next time.
Yeah.
And I am Shale at SHAELRILEY on Twitter. Thank you for watching and listening, and we'll be back again next weekend with more basic income advocacy. Bye-bye.